Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into a field that sits right at the heart of language learning, but maybe doesn't always get the spotlight: materials development.
Exactly. It's not just about, printing workbooks. It's this fascinating mix of theory, practical know-how, and even publishing realities.
We've been going through a huge amount of research, basically a whole handbook mapping out this area, and our mission for you today is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, we want to give you a kind of shortcut to understanding the key arguments, the history, and where things seem to be heading with learning materials, how they're made, how they're used, all of it.
And right off the bat, we need to tackle something the sources called the atheoretical myth. You know, the idea that developing materials is just, well, practical.
Right, like it's just a craft.
Yeah.
Victor Samuda pointed this out way back in 2005, this perception that there's no deep theory involved.
But that's really the core insight here, isn't it? Materials development is the bridge. It's where applied linguistic theory meets the messy reality of the classroom.
Absolutely. It's that interface. And that's why the field has, grown so much and become a proper academic discipline in its own right.
And what's great about the sources we looked at is the range of voices. It's not just the usual academic suspects.
No, definitely not. We're hearing from coursebook authors, editors, people actually involved in publishing this stuff, voices you don't always hear in the purely academic journals.
Which feels really important for actually moving things forward.
It's crucial. If you want research to genuinely improve practice, you need everyone talking: academics, writers, editors, teachers, and importantly, learners too. Real collaboration.
Okay, so let's trace that development a bit. As the field matured and theory became central, materials designers faced this pretty big challenge, right?
Huge challenge.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it wasn't enough to just rely on intuition. You had to produce materials for the four skills: vocabulary, grammar, all grounded in some kind of theoretical principle.
So thinking about how to sequence things, what vocabulary to introduce first, that all needed justification.
Exactly. Quality materials needed that theoretical underpinning. You couldn't just wing it anymore.
And right when that structure was kind of solidifying, technology just exploded onto the scene.
Oh, absolutely. A total game changer. The whole idea of what materials even are shifted dramatically. We're not just talking about paper books now.
Right. So what does count as materials in this digital age?
Well, pretty much everything a learner might interact with digitally. Apps, websites, online exercises. The definition just expanded massively.
Which immediately created a new problem, or rather, a new need.
Precisely. We urgently needed clear ways, shared criteria, to evaluate all these technology-mediated materials. Is this new app actually any good for learning? How do we know?
Which leads us naturally into blended learning, or BL. It sounds simple, mixed digital and face-to-face.
But often done quite superficially, the sources suggest, like just put in the workbook online.
So what makes it work? What's the principled approach?
That's the key. Good blended learning isn't just having online stuff alongside classroom stuff. The materials have to be designed so the online work actually dovetails with the face-to-face.
Dovetails, meaning?
Meaning the online activities might prepare students for the lesson or reinforce what happened in class.
Yeah.
They need to connect purposefully, creating a sort of learning loop, not just be parallel tracks.
Okay, I see. And then there's the mobile revolution. Phones, tablets, they're everywhere.
And the research field of mobile-assisted language learning, MAL, gives us the insights there.
Oh, so?
Well, MAL research helps materials writers figure out how to properly use the unique features of mobile devices, like location awareness or quick interactions, push notifications, to create activities that are actually pedagogically useful.
Not just shrinking a textbook onto a small screen.
Exactly. It's about leveraging the technology itself for learning.
So this tech explosion pushes us back to fundamental questions about content, which brings us to the coursebook wars.
Ah, yes. A long-running battle. The research goes through the arguments, the pro-coursebook camp versus the anti-coursebook camp, often quite polarized positions.
And the sources suggest the academic writing itself sometimes fuels this polarization.
Yeah, it kind of entrenches the views. Rather than looking for the nuances, the ways coursebooks can be valuable if used or adapted well, especially these big global coursebooks.
Which immediately raises the issue of authenticity, doesn't it? If we use coursebooks, how real is the language?
That's a massive debate. Coursebooks often use scripted dialogues. Are these good models for the messy, unscripted talk we hear in real life, the stuff you find in language corpora?
It's a trade-off then.
Totally. Designers have to select and grade language. You can't just throw raw, authentic, maybe very complex language at a beginner. Corpora show us what's frequent and real, but pedagogy dictates how it's presented.
So use the data, but don't let it kill creativity or teaching sense.
Pretty much. The sources definitely value corpus insights, moving away from just gut feeling, and they note the shift towards using spoken corpora and even learner corpora, not just written text.
Okay. And sticking with choices about language and content,
Yep.
what about the culture aspect? Particularly this idea that global ELT materials can be very Anglo-centric.
Yes, there's a strong argument being made for developing Global English's coursebooks. Notice the English is plural.
Ah, so not just course books sold globally, but books that actually reflect the diversity of English worldwide.
Exactly. Challenging that reliance on just British or American norms and perspectives, and trying to include the linguistic and cultural variety of English as it's actually used.
Which connects to another core point, challenging the myth that materials are somehow neutral.
Yeah, that myth gets thoroughly debunked. Materials are never neutral or apolitical. The choices made about what topics to include, what pictures to use, what dialogues to write, they all carry ideological weight.
Even implicitly.
Consciously or unconsciously, yes. The sources mention examples, like from Catalan coursebooks, showing how ideology is always present. So we need a more critical eye when looking at materials.
Okay, so if this is a serious academic field, what's the research agenda? Where do we need more work?
The sources lay out roughly 3 key areas. First, more content analysis, really understanding what's in the materials.
Just looking closely at the texts and tasks?
Yep. Second, consumption. How do teachers and learners actually use these materials in the classroom? What do they do with them?
And third?
Production. How are these materials actually written, edited, published? The whole commercial process.
Yeah.
And crucially, there's a call for more long-term studies.
Longitudinal studies.
Right, and experimental ones too, to see the actual impact over time, not just get snapshots.
Makes sense. Now, let's shift focus slightly to contexts that maybe don't get as much attention. You mentioned versioning earlier.
Ah, yes, versioning. Fascinating and complex. It's the process of taking a big international bestseller course book and adapting it for lots of different local markets.
So changing pictures, maybe tweaking some topics.
It can be much more than that. Sometimes it involves changing references to history, culture, religion, things that might be sensitive or inappropriate in a specific country.
Wow, that sounds ethically tricky.
Hugely. It's essential for selling the book globally, but it raises massive practical and ethical questions about what gets changed and why. It's balancing market needs with, well, truthfulness and cultural respect.
Like, how do you handle a controversial historical event for a country with a very different official story?
Exactly that kind of dilemma. It borders on censorship sometimes. The research clearly says this area needs much more investigation.
And beyond versioning, are there other specific areas needing more tailored materials?
Definitely. EAP English for academic purposes seems relatively well served, often drawing on detailed analysis of academic language.
But others are lacking.
Yes, particularly ESOL English for speakers of other languages. Materials tailored for learners not in academic settings, focusing on their specific life needs and contexts. There's a real scarcity there.
And surprisingly, you mentioned materials for learners in English-speaking countries.
Yeah, that was flagged as under-researched. You might think immersion makes it easier, but it creates different challenges.
Like what?
Well, the focus shifts. It's less about just providing language input, because that's everywhere. It becomes more about developing learner autonomy, boosting motivation when progress feels slow, navigating cultural differences. How do materials support that?
Interesting. Okay, let's pull back the curtain on the industry itself. What about the people making these materials, the authors, the editors?
Right, the view from the production side. Authors are juggling a lot of NANs for video, digital extras, embedding 21st century skills.
All while trying to rate engaging content.
Exactly. And dealing with potential issues like maybe pressure towards homogeneity in global products and the intense back and forth collaboration with editors, which is vital but often invisible.
And the editor's role must be under pressure too, with all the digital shifts and versioning demands.
Absolutely. Their role is changing fast, becoming more complex. They're the quality gatekeepers, crucial for maintaining standards amidst all this change.
But there's one more voice the sources highlight as really important.
The learner. There's a strong push for getting learners more involved in actually creating or adapting materials.
Learner-generated materials, how does that work?
It's seeing it not just as a fun side activity, but as potentially a core part of a learner-centered approach. When students adapt existing materials for their own needs or create their own resources, perhaps for other students, their engagement, their investment, it just skyrockets.
Right, it gives them ownership.
Exactly.
So, pulling all this together, materials development is clearly a complex, mature field, wrestling with some big issues: technology, ethics, ideology.
Mhm. And the main takeaway seems to be this constant need for better collaboration,
Hmm.
breaking down the walls between theory and practice, between researchers, publishers, teachers, and learners.
And empowering teachers.
Yes, encouraging teachers to become researchers in their own classrooms, evaluating materials, adapting them, understanding what works for their students. That seems to be the engine for real progress.
Okay, so to wrap up, let's leave our listeners with that provocative thought stemming from the gaps we've discussed. Given how global course books are and all the ethical knots around versioning,
Altering content for different cultures.
what principles should guide the politics and ethics of those adaptations? How do publishers navigate that responsibly?
And related to that, with the growing need for inclusivity, how can we make sure learning materials genuinely reflect linguistic and cultural diversity without just being tokenistic about it?
Big questions.
Hmm.
Definitely food for thought.
For sure. They really define the challenge for the field moving forward.
That was incredibly insightful. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you next time.